Hello, my beautiful Facebook fam. Emily Diamond here. I am on holidays, which is amazing. It's our spring vacation here in Australia. We just had a few days away camping, just gotten back home last night. And one of the things that was on my mind while I was away camping, because I was camping with my siblings and their kids and family friends, and my husband got to come and my parents got to come, and it was all really special and really connected, and there was lots of appreciation, and that's never lost on me because my life was not like that at all. My life was not connected to people. My life was angry with people. My life was seeing the unfairness in the world, wanting to make a big difference with the businesses that I wanted to have and hold space for, and the businesses that I wanted to empower, and the people that I wanted to support. But that my life was, not one of joy and connection and loving myself and getting to experience the love other people had for me, and never getting to really get that joy of what my work did. So my original career was starting out in medicine. I started out medical and went into work in injury rehab in sports, and I love that profession. Being able to touch people and take their pain away is a gift. It's a pleasure, it's a delight. And it was still, though, a very dissatisfactory experience for me because I so desperately wanted to help people. I was always that kid who was, programming people's VCRs and finding things that they had lost and getting immense pleasure from that. But what I had gotten to was this disconnection and essentially a relationship with myself where I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that people genuinely wanted me, loved me, could trust me or connect with people. And my work, this work that I was doing in injury rehab, I would see people get a little bit better, but I knew that they could get a whole lot better. And it non-stop frustrated me, made me angry that we could only take people so far in their change process. So for me, I had a spinal injury as a teenager, had nerve damage in my arm, lost some power and use in this arm, and had all sorts of complications, right? So I knew for myself that good rehab meant that you could go on and do bigger and better things. And my career of working in sports like that was only about 30% of people actually went on to do bigger and better things. For the rest of them, it became this thing that they would carry throughout this life, this problem they were carrying throughout this life, their limitation, the reason why they couldn't go on and do X, Y, and Z, the reason they couldn't be fully expressed, live their dreams. So I'd had that experience myself, so I knew that there could be something different. And, and I had my own problems as well, like my injury, and I'd had some long-term viral issues that made me really depressed, and then I'd had some trauma issues that had distorted my perception of who I was, what my potential was, what I deserved, my confidence, my capability, and my self-love. So that was all kind of mushed in there. It was all really, it felt like a big bundle of thread. It was like, where do you start pulling these threads apart? Was it the injury? Was it the illness? Was it the trauma? All this stuff. So I was just in this continual cycle of being really frustrated with my work, and then also knowing that frustration was coming from me. I was the reason why my patients weren't effectively rehabbing. Absolutely, they are 100% responsible for their life experience, but my limitation in my leadership skills, my limitation in my communication skills, my limitations in my influence strategies, my strategies that I used to make things so easy for people that of course it was just so easy for them to do those exercises or to change that discipline or to change their attitude or to change their mindset. I knew that those limitations were with me and my leadership and the way that I was caring for my patients. And so there was this dual side of frustration of going, I know it can be better and I know they can do better. So I'm a little bit annoyed at them, but also mostly I'm really annoyed at me that I lack the skills and resources to be able to affect that change, to be able to influence them, to be able to kickstart the process of them breaking through psychological patterns, determining a whole bunch of new behaviors, taking responsibility for whatever the breakdowns were, whether it was injury, illness, or whatever was going on in their life. And this was all pre-Google, pre-Facebook. So I was searching. I was searching for essentially, how do I be a better practitioner? How do I help my patients? I specialised in what's called cervicogenic headaches, which is headaches that you get caused by structural and muscular problems in the neck. So either there's a nerve issue or there's a long-term weakness, or they've had some sort of injury. So that was my specialization, these headaches that came from neck injury, okay, which now is very funny to me that the neck is the connection between the mind and body, etc. However, that frustration of seeing people temporarily taking their pain away and then they come back again 2 weeks later with the same thing because they didn't implement the change, they didn't do whatever they needed to do with their lifestyle, they didn't do what they needed to do with their behavior, their discipline, their attitude, their breathing, because we'd have to retrain people how to breathe and all this sort of stuff. That was making me crazy. So like I said, I was searching really for what's going to help me influence people better, what's going to make me a more effective communicator, what's going to help me be a better teacher, because one of the limitations I saw was if I can teach these techniques really well, people will think that they're easy and it won't be a hassle for them to do all their corrective exercises and all the things that they had to do with injury rehab all those years ago. And then I was also looking for, I knew that there was a whole bunch of limitations in me. So while I was judging them, I was also judging myself, going, yeah, but I don't have the best relationship with myself. And yeah, and I don't trust people. And yeah, I have, times where I absolutely hate who I am. And I have all these behaviors that I used to cope with it. So I had all these escapism behaviors and relief-seeking strategies with drugs and alcohol and food and unhealthy relationships. And the search became this 360 search. And I would go to seminars and I was reading books and I was going to workshops. And one thing that happened was I kept going to these workshops that were introductory events for learning different leadership skills, effective communication techniques, and then unconscious or subconscious change techniques. And that started to really pique my interest. Not because the workshops were showing me what the actual answers were, they were showing me that there was people who were walking in with one issue and then walking out without that issue anymore. So they were walking in with the issue of, needing to get relief from pain, emotional pain, stress, trauma, whatever, through addictive behaviors, and then walking out with that resolved. And I was like, oh, there's something there. And then there was people who were like, I used to not be able to effectively lead my team, my communication, my influence skills. And then they were walking out with, oh, and now I've been able to grow my company, stabilize my staff, etc. And I was like, there's something here. And most of it was revolving around this body of work called neuro-linguistic programming. But I really just thought the whole thing was a scam because I used to be very, very cynical as well. I'm still pretty cynical in terms of I need either real life experience or I need the data. Okay, so I didn't sort of lose my healthy skepticism, but I wasn't just skeptical in a healthy way. I was also really cynical and really negative. So most of the time I just thought it was an absolute scam because people were sharing across too many areas of life. So it would be people who were talking about money and their money breakthroughs, people who'd be talking about relationship change, people who'd be talking about what it did for their company leadership or their ability to grow their business. And then it was people talking about health issues. And I was like, this is too vague. This is too wishy-washy. This is way too big a spectrum for this to actually be the truth. Like, these people are either just being scammed or it's part of some sort of big scheme about how to front people at the front of the room, share something and get them, get you to cough up your 5 to 10K to do a course. So it took me a long while, and after going to workshops where they would show samples of processes and things like that, I'll be like, oh, there's still something here. And I kept getting led back to it, and life kept throwing people at me. And eventually I just was like, nah. It was about 2.5 years in of me searching and looking for information, all pre-Google. So I couldn't just search, I couldn't just jump online. And I was like, nah, fuck it. I'm going to meet someone and they're going to be a practitioner and they're going to answer all my questions. I set some pretty big criteria up, right? I was so frustrated. I was like, no, I'm going to meet someone. They're going to answer all my questions. They're going to actually show me how the techniques work, and they're going to explain the neurological theories behind them. Because when I was seeing them do the techniques, I was like, I don't understand the theories behind these, so I don't know if it actually works. And, placebo effect, I already knew really strongly about the placebo effect because of my training in medicine. So I was like, I need someone to show me. They had to explain it to me. And then one day, this woman walks into my office. So she was a medical doctor. She was an emergency medical doctor. And she had my specialty. She had cervicogenic headaches. So she came in. And after about the third session, which was the main time people would get their big experience of pain relief, would work on some structural issues, do some basic changes, and then they'd start to get really good quality of life and reduction in pain. After like her third session, we weren't talking so much about her problem, because most of her problem was now resolved. And I started to learn about her, and I'm like, oh, tell me a bit more about your work and your life. And she let it slip that, you know, she was working as an emergency medicine doctor, but she was also studying neuro-linguistic programming. She wasn't finished, she wasn't yet qualified, but she was studying. And I almost jumped on this woman. I was like, oh, no way. I've been looking at this, you have to tell me. I have so many questions. And because we had a similar medical background, I felt like I could really relate to her. I could really, really trust her. And so I made her promise that when she finished her training, she would call me and we would go through, you know, and I was like, I'll do whatever you want to do. I'll, you know, treat you for free. I don't care. I need you to show me. I need you to answer my questions, because I'm not spending 10K on the training course when at the heart of it, I was like skeptical and I thought it was all a scam, right? I thought it was all placebo effect. So she kept her promise. She was amazing. It's Dr. Joanna Martin. She now runs the global organization, one of many, which partners with the Hunger Project. She's such an incredible woman. And yeah, so she kept her promise. She called me, and then she and I began our process of working together. So she was my patient and I was her patient, and I worked with her on my key blockages, right? So the relief-seeking strategies, so the constant low level of stress and trauma and compartmentalization, resolving the issues around significant negative emotional events that really clouded my judgment and made me that cynical, that nasty version of skepticism that assumed the worst of people, that I couldn't trust people, that I wasn't going to be able to get the resources I required, that I wasn't going to be able to trust the structures around me and my ability to build the businesses and change the business into what I wanted it to. And then also the issues that I faced with relationships, like I was talking about, those communication issues, not really feeling like I could express my needs, and it wasn't okay for me to express my needs and get my needs met. So that was the beginning of that change for me. And the main thing was she kept her promise. She showed me how the techniques work, and she gave me insight into the theories behind them and how they have been developed over time, and which particular research programs and different practitioners did the groundbreaking work of developing these models. So, you know, the people starting in the 1920s doing the work on taking developmental theory, taking what we knew about neurology, taking what we knew about human communication, around the way that our brain responds to the environment, the way our nervous system responds to the environment. And she was really kind and patient and actually gave me some of the behind the scenes of it. So it took 3 years all up. It took 3 years for me to start that search, sitting in that frustration and skepticism and cynicism and totally kind of over my patients and over myself, to get to a point where I had a whole bunch of answers. And then I could understand why all those people who I thought had been sort of scammed or had significant placebo effect, or kind of, you know, just sort of like that hive mind excitement that people get wrapped up in. I could understand why they had changes across this broad spectrum of areas in their life. So that reassured me, and that took care of my concerns. And then I was like, well, that's the area I want to go in, because I want to be a better practitioner. I knew there were all these limitations in my leadership and my ability to serve my clients. So I went and studied in that, and I went and studied under her. I went and studied under Joanna Martin, which was incredible. And, you know, that was 2005. So it's almost 15 years ago. And then gradually as well, I moved out of injury rehab. I started doing a whole bunch of corporate training and speaking. And then that led to doing a whole bunch of one-on-one work, which became the thing of, those were the type of businesses that I wanted to run, where we were directly impacting people's lives. People could then go and implement their own strategies. They weren't stuck with needing a practitioner all the time. I have like, you know, issues with that, in terms of there are great strategies that people can learn themselves. There are areas absolutely where they're complex issues and you need objective, disassociated support to identify patterns, identify beliefs. There are techniques that, yes, you should never do to yourself as well. But there's a whole segment around particular theories that we can all apply to ourselves, and you don't need to be a skilled practitioner. It doesn't have to be an elitist thing. Once you learn those theories, they change the way that you interact with your world. They change the way you fundamentally think. They impact your thought structure. And so for me, giving people those in the forms of training became most important to me, because I'd spent that 3 years of going, no one's giving it to me, and knowing that there was an answer there, but it was like being withheld. And there's sort of like this secret society in the development world, in the personal and professional development world. That really bugged me. I was like, I spent 3 years trying to break through that. We should be making this available to people who want to learn. So that became the beginning of me realizing that time as a strategy doesn't produce with predictability the results that we want. Most of the things we're looking for is that, time is the greatest thing that will cause change, and, water under the bridge, and then if enough time passes, the problem gets resolved. So for me, I discovered that my problems or my issues or limitations plus time, like a mathematical formula, created bigger problems. So sure, things like letting go of anger and things like that, and things not hurting as much. Yes, time can absolutely help you, but it doesn't actually resolve the core issue in of its own. I can say hundreds, probably close to 1,000 times, I've had people say to me, oh yeah, that happened so long ago, that doesn't affect me anymore. And then with a very short period of time, we can distinguish where people have thought patterns, where they have decision-making criteria, where they have strategies that they're using in their life, their business, their leadership, their families, their relationships, that are a direct correlation to something negative that they learn. And by negative, I mean limited choices. So something bad happens, I go, oh, well, I can't trust those kind of people. That limits our choices, right? Instead, what we need to be learning is lessons more like, oh, there was early warning signs. I'm going to learn those early warning signs and interact with people, or interrupt things, or get out earlier, or communicate my boundaries, or have agreements in place that protect me. Those are called empowering positive learning. So it gives us more choices. So I can't tell you how many times that's happened. People are like, oh, I don't even think about that. Oh, that doesn't even affect me. And of course you don't even think about it. We don't think about it consciously. We're thinking about it unconsciously. So this strategy of time being the thing to fix things, and time being the thing to heal things. Yes, things can lose the intensity of their emotion, but they will still inform our neurology. They still inform the way we make our decisions and what determines our behavior without us even consciously thinking about it. So that's one thing about time. Other thing I discovered, like I said about time, like a mathematical formula, if a problem or a limitation or an issue is in an area that's of high value to you, it's an area of life that really matters, it actually becomes that the problem plus time equals a bigger problem. It means a bigger mess, okay? And then that means more to deal with and more to undo. And the reason why we don't address problems is because we either lack strategies, or we've got a negative emotional association, like we're scared to, we feel guilty, we're ashamed and embarrassed that we're dealing with this problem in the first place. That's a huge one in business that I deal with business owners, is that they're embarrassed that they're dealing with this. They're like, I should know this. This shouldn't be like this. Other people are handling this. Why is it wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me, and shame's an identity issue. So we take it personally, what's going on around us. Instead of just adapting and learning the strategies and the techniques, we take it personally. It becomes about our relationship with ourselves. So coming back to this thing of time as a strategy, to me, has never ever worked. Like, I spent 3 years looking for those answers. The frustration, the irritation, the destructive relationships, the ineffectiveness with the communication, the inability to break bad behaviors and create new loops, those problems didn't get smaller, those problems got bigger. And I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about when I say that the problem just gets bigger when you add time. Okay, so that, like I said, set me up on this pathway of going, whoa, okay, I could really use all these skills once I'd learned them and I understood the theories behind them were valid, and there was enough experiments and enough people who'd gone through, and I then had to go through it myself to test that it was real. I was like, yep, this is real. Okay, I took it into my injury rehab work. That tripled my business, which was incredible. That was because people were getting results quicker, so they were referring more people. So instead of fixing people faster and them leaving my business, it became a flood of business. It became a massive waiting list. It became a big joy as well with my work, because I developed a whole bunch of structures and systems and processes and strategies that made everything easier for the clients, made everything easier for me, made the whole proposition so much more valuable, and was able to position myself with pricing and everything that was reflective of that. I was based in Sydney. I was in a big multidisciplinary clinic in the heart of the CBD in York Street, and then also had a private practice. I loved that time. I look back on that time, I just think I can't believe how much change happened. There was also the change of breaking all these negative behaviors with my coping mechanisms, with my social network that was where we weren't empowering each other to be bigger people. We were encouraging each other to complain about our lives and stay small, so it was convenient for each other, because then we had a lovely pity party. All of that changed in such a short time, and then of course that's led me on to being able to train and teach and lead in companies all around Australia and internationally. So I want to encourage you, if you're telling yourself a story about time, about, oh, we'll just see how it goes, like the let's see conversation, let's see how it goes, let's see if this resolves on its own, let's see if the staff figure it out themselves, let's see if, you know, in next quarter it's different in the business, let's see if after this X amount of time my communication and my leadership and my relationships somehow magically change on their own, or that other person changes and then I don't have to. If you are entertaining those conversations around time, I want to remind you that there's a whole other strategy. It isn't just time. There's this other strategy I call transformation. And transformation for me is not something mystical and woo-woo. It's getting the strategies, the processes, and understanding the models around how I think, how my behavior is produced, how I get my results. To change the form of your results, to change the form, it requires a completely new approach. So when we're looking at time versus transformation, I'm definitely here in the transformation camp, and I will always, hand on heart, encourage people to be on the transformation camp, because even if you make one simple change, that then you need a time lag, which is you have to then implement and see what pans out. One simple change, like from what I've experienced in my life, is doing one simple change, which was starting to look for those techniques. That has completely changed everything. It's enabled me to have the businesses I have, to make the impact that I'm making around the world, to have the family that I love, to be able to be the kind of wife who's dealt with a husband who's had a critical illness, and we've been able to be stronger for that. That was not going to happen for me while time was my strategy. And working with countless businesses now and switching them over from time strategies to transformational strategies, you know, working with the psychology, working with the structure in the company, and then dealing with the simple things like the way we monitor, the way we run our rhythms, the way we support our staff, the way we lead, the way we communicate, the way we manage our own personal emotional state and lead others to do the same. That to me now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ever thought that time was the answer in terms of that interpersonal effectiveness, that leadership effectiveness. Yeah, it boggles my mind when I think back to going, oh my gosh, I spent 3 years frustrated, disappointed, angry, blaming everybody else, looking for the answer. And in that, lost so much time, lost so much potential. The time that was wasted, I look back now and think, oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. Thankfully now we have way better resources in terms of the internet and what we can search for in communities that we can join, which means we can find what we need so much quicker and assess so much quicker if that's actually going to be the thing that works for me. So we're very fortunate now. It's incredible, and I'm so lucky that I can take advantage of that, like the programs that I run digitally. None of that would exist without the internet infrastructure. It is just incredible. So if you're knowing that you're someone who's like waiting and doing the time strategy, I do encourage you to focus instead on structure and strategy and psychology. That has been the thing through the countless businesses and individuals that I've worked with. That beats time every single round. Then they go into the ring. Strategy, structure, and psychology always beats the let's see, let's wait, let's try and fix it. Okay, if you need to talk about what you're dealing with in terms of what you're waiting for with your let's see how it goes, or surely this is going to get better on its own, or that person's going to change, or circumstances didn't change, or the market's going to change, then reach out and talk to me. I'm on vacation for a little bit longer, but if you go onto my bookings page for my link there, you'll see that there's a couple of times available in October. Really happy to chat with you about your business, your leadership, what you're dealing with. And if this resonates with you, thanks for sharing, thanks for sticking in and listening. I know I've shared a bunch about my personal story today, about what led me to my big sort of breaking points and change points, but that's what it takes. That's what it takes for us to change. So thank you for sticking with me. Thanks for being in here. I love you all. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.